Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nom Watch Review, part of Nom Talk Network. On this show, if you already don't know, we review the latest film drop or throwback celebrating a milestone while eating and drinking our favorite movie and snacks. So it is wonderful to see you all again. Last time I did a Muppets Christmas Carol, and it was beautiful. It was amazing. I loved it. It was so happy. It was. Oh, I want to watch it again. It was amazing. But if you don't know who I am, my name is Jordyn Orozco. And right now I'm drinking my go-to Mai Tai. I feel like I always have a Mai Tai when I'm drinking on this show or doing anything on here. So it's been awesome. It's awesome. And I have some amazing and wonderful, I have a tamale from Sandra's, which is in East LA, and some beans, homemade, all this wonderful stuff. I cannot wait to just chomp on it because it was so good. I had a green chili pork one today, and it was just the right amount of spice, and it was just amazing. So, yeah, it is wonderful to see you all. And we have two wonderful people that I have always done some reviews from recently, and always have seen and been guests on. And we have a new person tonight, y'all, and we would like to welcome him. So let me introduce Eric, Jen, and James. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to everything. Eric, let's start with you. What are you chomping on? What are you drinking?
Well, I am taking a break tonight, so I am drinking a lemon seltzer water. They're delicious. I've gotten on that seltzer trend. And then I'm eating some homemade pork green chili rellenos and pork green chili. So I am enjoying my life right now.
I love that. It sounds amazing. And Jen, what are you jumping on? What are you doing?
Well, tonight I have a apple tart with some maple vanilla whipped cream, none of which is homemade. And I have some maple espresso tea over here to wash it down with, and water. I'm going easy on myself tonight, except the caffeine.
I love how you always have the best desserts to eat on the show.
Right?
Every single time.
The tart is that it's for Eponine, no. Anne Hathaway's character.
Oh,
yes.
Fontaine.
Fontaine. I listened to this all day today and I can't remember. So yeah.
It's okay. You have music in your head. You don't have
so
names.
Much.
You don't have
correct.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And James, friend, what are you drinking? What are you chomping on tonight?
Hey. So I am doing a barrel aged stout, which is it's gonna be blurred out, I guess. But there you go.
Ooh, love it.
I don't know why the camera doesn't work, but I've got it in my little sister glass, which is also disappearing.
Nice.
There we go.
Yeah.
And I made myself a pizzadilla. So I kind of combined a quesadilla with, I think I've talked to you about this before. Got a little broccoli and spinach and mushroom and onion in there, and some chicken and bolognese and shredded cheese. So we'll see if it falls apart on camera. I'm sorry in advance.
So yeah, clearly James wins the I made my own shit award tonight. So there it is. Q's in the chat.
I made all mine too.
Yeah. Q's in the chat. He says, "Hey all, how's everyone? Had some chicken breast and mashed potatoes and gravy. That sounds healthy and amazing. Sounds wonderful. So in case all of y'all didn't even know from our backgrounds, I mean, if you don't know from at least Eric's background, from my background, from Jen's background, from James' background, we are talking about the 2012 wonderful theatrical version of Les Misérables, or as us in the musical theater industry know it as Les Mis. And so this film, clearly, let's first start off by saying how we sort of felt up to watching the film, or how you were introduced to the film. So let's start with me. This is a very interesting story, and James knows the history of my history very well. For those of you that don't know, James is a really good friend. He's my best friend's husband, and we've been friends for years. So I was a musical theater kid in high school. Always loved musical theater. I was in Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. I did The Wiz. I did Three Musketeers was turned into a musical theater, and we did it. And then we also did Fiddle on the Roof. So I was totally into it. And every time we would go to competition, every time that would happen, it would be Les Mis was the thing. And if you didn't know what Les Mis was, you were stupid. And I was what the fuck is Les Mis? So I bought the unabridged version of the book and started reading it. Obviously got through maybe 2 chapters and I just put it down because I'm not going to fucking read this. Like, this is stupid. And then never watched it ever. And then I got an opportunity to go to Les Mis with a friend and her niece, and it was like close to Mother's Day, so I took her out for Mother's Day brunch. We got wasted on unlimited mimosas. Then we took an Uber to the Pantages where we saw Les Mis. Well, let me just tell you that we laughed our asses off when people like it was just not a good mix. It was just not a good mix. I had a good time, but I just didn't get the story. And then one night I went over to James and Lindsay's house and we're like, let's just watch the movie version and maybe you'll get it even more because it's more of a concise sort of version of the play and of the story. So I said, okay. So I went over, watched it, and I actually loved it. Like the only reason why I loved it is because we had dinner, we had like drinks, and we were, because James loves it, we sang and we we performed the musical in a bunch of other places, and it was really awesome. So I got a little bit more of an experience of Les Mis, and I sort of found parts of it very interesting and parts of it just like, what's going on? Like it kind of seems very confusing to me. So that was my introduction to Les Mis. I was introduced to it very late in life. But we'll give our popcorn readings, later. But yeah, that's sort of my introduction. Let's go backwards. James, let's start with you. What was your introduction to Les Mis and how did you feel about it when you first watched it?
Yeah, I didn't really know anything about it. When it came out in 2012, we saw it in theaters. I was in Mexico at the time, and it was like $2 to watch a movie, like in a brand new, state of the art theater. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I didn't really like musicals, and I really didn't like musicals where they just like sing the whole time. Like I was used to it's like they do a number and then they go back to regular dialogue. So this was like an adjustment for me. But by the end of it, I was into it. And then since then, I kind of worked backwards, and I've seen it live at the Pantages. I've watched like stuff on YouTube of other performances. I've listened to the other soundtracks from other editions and stuff, and I just it's kind of a bias thing. Like I guess I saw this like brand new state of the art production that was very modern. Had a lot of big actors that I guess a lot of people we know them, they're familiar. And so working backwards from that to even seeing it live for the first time at the Pantages, it was kind of hard to like really appreciate as much or get into, because I just felt like everybody was, number one, like way higher pitched than I was used to and kind of shrieking, and number two, like rushing through it. And the nice thing with the theatrical version is they got to kind of take their time a little more. So yeah, I think that might kind of explain some of my bias, and I know that would probably ruffle feathers with like people who are actually into theater and everything, but
yeah. And I think that like, there's some things where like the cinematic version, it like slowly eases people into the actual production, and then they go see it live and they appreciate it even more, which I feel like if that was my journey, it would have probably been a little bit better because I probably would have appreciated it more. So yeah, that makes sense. Jen, let's go with you. What was your introduction? How did you appreciate Les Mis?
Oh, it would have been, I was in high school, so like 91 maybe, and I was obsessed with Phantom of the Opera. Obsessed. We saw it, I don't know how many times at Amundsen. And then when I moved to San Francisco to go to college, I saw it 6 more times. And in the meantime, I discovered, okay, there's other musicals out there. And one of them was Les Misérables. And I was given the complete symphonic version, which is 3 discs, every note of the play. And I was like, well, I never want to listen to anything else. So I obsessed on that one for a while. Learning now that probably was ADHD, not so much being obsessive, just like focus. And I loved it. Most of my musical theater was, I learned the songs. I knew every song before I saw the show for the most part. This was no exception. I think the first time I saw anything visually was one of the anniversaries on PBS when they did the concert. Mm-hmm. And then I finally got a chance to see it in the early 2000s on stage. And I've seen it 3 times now on stage. And I'm torn because I agree with the theatrical version being able to ease you into it and let you see it a little more fleshed out. But man, just the way they stage this, it doesn't need a lot of that fleshing out to me, except could they have changed some of these names? Because I try to keep track of some of the characters. I couldn't even remember Fontaine, for heaven's sake, but some of them are really complicated. So I feel like there's a few things they could have tweaked, but on the whole, it's one of my favorite stage productions to see, and I enjoyed the movie.
Sure. And then Eric, what was your first introduction to this film and to Les Mis in general?
Well, much like you, I'm a musical theater kid. Went to college for musical theater and everything like that. So Les Mis is one of those things that you just know of. It's the shining star in the distance that every musical theater kid wants to do for some odd reason. I am not this show, so I am not one of those people, but I can appreciate it for what it is. But yeah, no, I was graduating college when this movie came out. So all of us graduating college being like musical theater, like minds obsessed. All of us went to the movie theater and watched it. And I appreciated it for what it was. And I get how you guys, yeah, like everybody's reiterated, it's an introduction. There's just things that I would have changed with this. But we'll get into that. And then I've seen a couple of productions of it that I appreciate because, like you said, the things that you can do on stage are amazing with this. It's simplified and it's just about the person on stage doing what they have to do. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So before we go into story, casting, all that stuff, let's give our popcorn bucket ratings, y'all, because that's what we do on this show. All right. So Eric, what would you give this? What rating would you give Les Mis, the 2012 version?
I would give this version a 3. Just because pacing wise, in some parts I have issues with.
Sure.
A lot of the casting I have issue with. And just like acting moments and everything, that some of the choices I do not understand. So a 3 is what I have to go with.
Okay. And then let's go to you, James. What would you rate this film?
I would go 5 out of 5. I'm leaning toward 4.5 just because I feel like pacing, it does kind of drag out at the end. But it's a long movie, so I get that. Maybe you're just fatigued. So yeah, I know, like watching it again last night, I was like, oh yeah, I don't really need to see the end. It kind of drags on. So, but yeah, I'd fall somewhere in the 4.5 to 5.
Great. And Jen, what would you rate this film?
I gave it 3 popcorn buckets. And pretty much the same reasons as Eric. I feel like we have a very same view of this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would also rate it a 3 out of 5. I think just basic, like from the base, I just don't get the story.
Okay.
Like it plays out, but I just don't get it. Like, why did that need to be a musical? Like it could have easily just been an art piece performance for an hour, and I would have been fine. Would have been great. But there were some things, right? Like obviously the introduction that I had to it versus like the movie and all that stuff, where I was like, okay, and like generally I do get it, but I was just like, it was just very confusing to me. So I would say 3 out of 5. So let's go into it, right? So let's talk about the story just in general, right? Going off of the movie, but also all of us are very familiar with the story. Basically, we start out with Jean Valjean. He's a prisoner, and Russell Crowe's character, I always forget his name. Starts with an R.
Javert.
Excuse me. Obviously, we see some tension there, right? Like we see that there is this guy who stole a loaf of bread, and this guy's like, no, you're guilty, I'm gonna get you, like you got to do all this stuff, and he ends up escaping, going out and seeking solitude, and then sort of like everything just like branches out from this point, where we get Anne Hathaway's character. Clearly she is, I will put it in a period piece, she's a harlot. She has to become a harlot to sort of you know, sort of get by. And then we get introduced to all these other characters that are into it. We get Eddie Redmayne, we get Sacha Baron Cohen, which is probably one of my favorite pieces of the entire play by itself, Master of the House. We just get this story that unravels of all these people sort of not only trying to get by during this revolution that's happening, but also just sort of trying to live their life, right? Like in sort of like a society where things are deemed criminal and things can be very dark and devious in this time. And so we'll probably get into the like nitty gritties once I ask you, but let's talk about the story specifically. I know we don't have that much time, so we can't get into like the entirety of like what this whole like play and production is about. But what did we generally think about the story? I'll start with you, Jen.
I feel like this is the Love Actually of musicals. It has so many storylines, right? So,
Yep.
and it does. It starts with one and it blossoms from there. It's not a very happy story. It's not, but the music is so beautiful that somehow you kind of, it's hard to hold on to that sadness because there is hope in the story. And the characters, I the same. I tried to read the book. I'm like, oh, I was a literature major at the time. I can read. No, God, it's so boring. It was just impossible to read. But I think it was an ambitious story to turn into a musical. And they probably could have trimmed a couple things here and there, whether we're talking the stage or the movie. But on the whole, they balanced it fairly well. But the pacing of the movie overall, it's not one particular story that drags things out. It's just an uneven pacing throughout the movie. But I think, I think it's got a lot of good themes in it and a good moral in some points.
Sure. Erric, let's go to you. What did you think about the story, just in general? What are your thoughts?
I agree. The story itself, this should not have become a musical. Maybe a play would have been better. Fine.
Sure.
But even in the show, the play, and everything, like the musical itself, people are very grandiose when they do it. And so transferring that into screen where you have to be subtler was very interesting take on it, or for me. I think they did an okay job with it because it did keep with doing all the stories and keeping characters more relevant. But like Jennifer said, the pacing throughout the entire movie is just off. And I feel that's because you have all these big name actors like Russell Crowe, Hugh Jackman, Anne Hathaway, who are going to take their moment. Because look, Anne Hathaway got an award for this, and they were going to pull it out as long as they needed to. And I don't think that it just needed to be done that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And James, what did you think about the story? What did you think about how it sort of played out in the cinematic version?
Yeah, I like all the blending of the different storylines. I think it's really it was done in an artful way, the way that they play off of Valjean's whole storyline. Again, I don't know what to compare it to, so just at face value, like I have an idea of what to compare it to, but when I first saw it, like at face value, it was just like I was just following the story instead of being like, oh, it was better in the 1966 production when this guy did this twirl or whatever. Like I didn't have that. So I just kind of got to absorb it as it went along. And on the surface, it actually was, I was like, oh, okay. There was a lot of cliche type stuff. I was like, yeah, of course. But then, winding the clocks back to like the late 1800s and actually contextualizing it in the time that it was set and the time that it was written, I was like, okay, I can understand like some of the simple themes and a simple analysis of that theme. You need to keep it basic if you're going to keep layering, because if you go too far down, like even Javert's character was very people are, he was very pensive and he had a lot of like processing he was doing through the whole thing, but none of it was that complicated. He was very legalistic and so nothing was too complicated that everybody was struggling with, but it was nice the way that they kind of tied it all in together. And I love the social commentary throughout. which was definitely highly advanced, like for the time, to an extent. I mean, we did have a lot of good social thinkers at the time too, and some of the big like heavy mind work was going on at the time in terms of social theory and the emergence of even like the Communist Manifesto in response to a lot of the ways that capitalism was ravaging Europe in conjunction with like the systems of inequality that they had then, and like class structure and everything. But yeah, it's just highly relevant, I feel like, and it's timeless. And in many ways, kind of what many of the things that we're struggling with today, depending on who you ask, it's a little problematic with the January 6th context of, if you frame this against that and you see those guys as like, oh yeah, we're doing the same thing. And it's like, no, this is not the same thing.
This is not the French Revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doubt they've seen the inside of a theater to watch Les Mis. So.
Right.
Wait, they're like,
what the French Revolution was.
yeah, no, that was James, everybody, like to like give some awesome and wonderful context. This is amazing.
Yes.
And that's kind of the stuff, right, that like a lot of people miss from these like films and from like this specific like play is like there's context, there's like historical aspects, but and I think for me, like I have issues with period pieces in general because I'm just like great, fine, whatever. And I think that sort of like in the musical theater sort of world, that's what was different about Hamilton was the fact that like it was a period piece, but it was so modern that like people were into it and like you could understand it in a way where it was like if you didn't get the banter, if you didn't get the wit, like you wouldn't get the whole fucking play. And I think this is like one of those things where it was like it's presented to us in a way where it's entertaining, there's value in it. And if you didn't sort of listen to the small details, you kind of were like I don't know. Like, and I why should I care in a way, right? And I think that like, if I had a kid or if like I had somebody that wanted to see Les Mis, I'd be like, yeah, like this is a glorified version of sort of what happened, but also like it's a good introduction into the play and into sort of musical theater, and you probably should watch it. So I feel like that was a really, really important aspect. And so let's get into something that we've all sort of like skirted around and like wanted to talk to is the casting of this film, right? If you've ever seen sort of like a musical production of this, I think we all have in one shape, form, or another. Seeing these like really big Hollywood stars in these, sort of roles is definitely interesting, right? Like Hugh Jackman is a musical theater dude, right? Like before he became Wolverine, before he did all this stuff, he was in musical theater, right? And Anne Hathaway has like a unique presence when she like brings it on and like does all this, right? Eddie Redmayne, right? Like I had no idea he could sing. Like I first saw him in it wasn't Fantastic Beasts. It was what was the one?
The other girl or something like that?
Yes. It was that one. And then I saw him in this and I was like, oh, cool. Like I didn't know. And then obviously there's Russell Crowe where I was like, oh, honey, I don't know if, you should have. Yeah. So let's talk about the casting. First, I will go to Eric. What did you think about the casting? What are your thoughts? Go ahead.
Like you said, Hugh Jackman, he was made for this role. I think he is a very good Valjean. He gets little intricacies of him and can really play him up. I'm going to leave Russell for the end so Jennifer and I can collaborate on this one. Anne Hathaway did an okay job. She just was very, I think at the time when she was cast in this, was the starlet of Hollywood. And so she gave a little bit more than I think she needed to. Especially like when she won the award and everything, she was just like, I sang live in person and that's not that I was crying real. And I'm like, well, bravo, but still people on stage can do it and you can understand them and feel them a little bit more. My favorites of this are Sacha Baron Cohen and Helena Bonham Carter. Like those two, get them on screen anytime and I'm going to watch them because They can play off of each other. They can sing, which surprises me about Sasha. But they're just so great and comedic, and it just lightens the whole movie up for me. And then Erin Tveit and Samantha Burks were Broadway people anyway, and they had been in the show on Broadway. So pulling them into this was a brilliant idea. Amanda Seyfried, okay. I've seen her sing from Mamma Mia and all of that. So it was all right. But I feel like Anne, Russell, and Amanda and Eddie kind of had issues with having to sing live and put themselves in the movie, because you could see there was a lot of vibrato a lot of the time, and it annoyed me. That's why I don't like Eddie Redmayne in this part, because it was just vibrato, and I was like, okay, calm down. You could just hold a note. But yeah. And then Russell Crowe, hated him. He was just swallowing his tongue the entire time. And I don't think he brought anything to the character. It was just a pensive thing. Like even at the end when he kills himself, a lot of people I know didn't get that he actually was confused that somebody could change. Because it was just like, okay, Russell jumped off a bridge. I don't feel bad because I like him. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. James, let's go to you. What did you think about the casting? Were there any issues? Did you like it?
The last thing that I remember seeing like Amanda Seyfried in was Mean Girls, and so to see that switch before being to take her seriously was hard, because the last time I saw her, she was like squeezing her boob and like telling the weather. But that was a little hard to take seriously. Helena Bonham Carter and Sacha Baron Cohen, absolute gems. Love seeing Sacha Baron Cohen and stuff. Like he kills it and stuff when he's acting. I mean, he's always acting, right? But he kills it when he's not doing I don't know, like real life type stuff. Yeah, like and so that was good. I don't know. I don't have a lot to compare it to. I also see past a lot of the characters too. I go straight to the analysis and the thematic aspects of it. So when somebody goes, "Oh, Russell Crowe didn't do a good job. He can't sing," I'm like, I didn't notice. And I will say this before we dig into Russell Crowe, like I'm not even defending because I really don't care. I don't have a dog in this fight, but I will say this. This was an American production of this film, and it had to be sold to Americans, and Americans had to take the law enforcement aspect seriously. And they have an idea of this long-standing George Washington, Texas, Yosemite Sam type kind of like gruff masculinity thing that they're hung up on, and they had to take him seriously. And I don't know that American audiences, who are not the only people watching it, but I don't think that American audiences would have taken him seriously if he had that like haughty nobility type, with a cane and a long hair and all that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think like the way that he was probably envisioned in the original book, I don't think it would have resonated well. And Russell Crowe of all people probably knew that. So casting him could have been the biggest mistake ever. But I hope that context is clear too, that he brought this deep, brooding, pensive masculinity aspect to it that I thought was fantastic. And I have a hard time when I hear people say, "Oh, he wasn't a good job there." I'm like, you obviously have a different picture that you're holding on to, and I totally respect that. So it's just interesting to me.
Yeah, definitely. And then Jen, what did you think about the casting? What did you think about all that?
Well, I do have a different picture of Javert, and if you find a clip of Philip Quast from the Australian cast or Norm Lewis, 100%. Norm Lewis he's masculine, he's forceful, he understands what the character is doing. Russell Crowe's a phenomenal actor. My issue is mainly with his singing, because I also did musical theater and I also used to sing, and you sing here, you can sing here. I feel like he's singing out his tear ducts, and it makes my head hurt for him. This is a technique thing. It's nothing about acting or the character. It's a technique thing on the singing, and I can feel him struggling to even hit the few notes they gave him. They definitely adjusted this song for him. That took away from it for me, because of hearing Philip Quast and hearing Norm Lewis and other people throughout the ages. I have to say one of my favorite castings that we haven't hit on is the Bishop. The Monsignor is Cole Wilkinson, who was an amazing Javert himself, and he is in one of the PBS versions of it. I think that he's in the 10th and the 25th, if I remember correctly, but he's definitely in the 25th. He's phenomenal. He sings so many different roles so amazingly. So it was such a treat to see him in this little role and that they gave him that moment. I can't say enough about Hugh Jackman, his scene where he has his revelation of what he needs to do, just tears, chills when he looks up at the ceiling. Oh, Amanda Seyfried sounded like she had a little bird trapped in her throat trying to get out, like a high, fast vibrato. Yeah. I was all, whoa, whoa, whoa. Drag those out a little bit. And Eddie Redmayne, again, phenomenal actor, but I felt like he was being made to sing when he was like, yeah, I can kind of sing. And then they're like, cool, you're going to do a great job. And he did okay, but you could tell it wasn't something he was very comfortable with. Hugh Jackman is Broadway, Aaron Tveit Broadway, very comfortable with it. And that's no fault of the actors, of any of them. So it could have been cast better, but like to James's point, not even about the law enforcement aspect. You're trying to sell a movie to an American audience. You need recognizable faces that America's going to be like, I'm going to put down $15 to watch this, or whatever it was 10 years ago.
$12.50
or $2 or 200 pesos in Mexico.
right
Going to Mexico,
right? Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, and I that's a really good point. I think that like in order to sell this film, right, because it was a film, right, it's not like a play where people are going to go based off the popularity of the play or like how they know the play or if they love the play, right? Like if they see Russell Crowe, if they see Hugh Jackman, if they see Anne Hathaway, right, the names, they're going to go and see it just because they know who these people are. And then it's a musical, right? Like they know what's going to happen. And so, casting for me, it was for the film, it wasn't hit or miss for me. It was more along the lines of like, oh, this is what they got. Cool. Like, cool. Let me just hear it. Let's hear what's going on. And I think what made it more memorable for me was like me, James, and Lindsay were singing Master of the House, watching this entire thing. And it was just like, that was the scene, right? Like that's like the party scene. That's like the scene that happens, in the film. And it was a good sort of, but you're right. Like anything that you put Sacha Baron Cohen and Helena Bonham Carter in, you're like, you gotta watch it. They sing, it's great. Like Sweeney Todd, like all of that. They're phenomenal actors. And when I first watched it, I didn't have a problem with Russell Crowe. And then I think I was watching like a clip of it the second time, and I was like, "This is who they got? Cool." When there was, when there's a lot of people that probably would have done the part justice, but I didn't necessarily think that he ruined the film for me. I just think that it was just there was better, right? Like there could have been something else that could have been done. Hugh Jackman, I have no problem with anything that he's in musically. Like you are a fucking phenomenal actor. You're Wolverine, for God's sake. Like you're there. You're it. You're the greatest showman, right? Like that's you. And I was really happy that he was in this film and he played Jean Valjean. Anne Hathaway, I thought, it was an easy pick, but it was okay for me. It was an okay pick. And I believed the character. I believed her acting. I believed the singing. It was fine.
I mean, we all did. She won an award for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think, I don't think it was a bad pick. Yeah. Could they have chosen better? Absolutely. 100%. But, I think the casting, Eddie Redmayne, when he first appeared, I was like, that's a little odd. Like, that's a little odd choice. And then sort of, how it played out and everything that happened, and like you said, Jen, it's not a happy ending. So, excuse me. Let's go ahead.
Since you mentioned Anne Hathaway's award, I will say it was brought to my attention that the ratio of her screen time to her getting that award compared to somebody else who might have worked for a year on something else and been like, I memorized a 200-page script. I was on screen for 70 minutes. You know what I mean? Like it's disproportional and the quantity of her time that she put. I'm like, okay, great. You had excellent 11 minutes on screen. Like mind blowing, very talented. But like you got an A+ on like one assignment versus somebody else is like, I've been working all semester on this. You know what I mean? And it's like, I can see how people were upset. I think that's fair.
I mean, even with that, because talking about her award, now that we all brought it up, this is really the turn of Anne Hathaway where the public started to dislike her, because much of the public, I can't remember, something about her speech, she was very disingenuous. And then people started to see like, oh, this girl isn't the ingenue that we thought she would become, because this was one of her first older roles besides like Princess Diaries and stuff like that. So this is where society started to turn on Anne Hathaway, and like her career kind of died after this movie because a lot of people were like, you shouldn't have gotten this award because you were on screen for 11 minutes and you're just very disingenuous. So it's brought back up now, but
I think you're absolutely right. I think they played off of that in her Black Mirror, or was it Black Mirror, whatever the show was that had little shorts. And she was in one, and she was an emotional wreck. Like she had bipolar disorder, and she was Anne Hathaway from Les Misérables, where she was on her best year and loving it, and like a super highs. And then right before she was going to go out on this like date or something, she just crashed and went into a manic like bipolar episode, which lasted 3 days of her depressed in bed, like with the blinds closed. And I think they 100% played off of exactly what you're describing.
Oh yeah,
she wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay, so one of the things I do want to talk about, let's talk about the costuming, right? Like of this entire film. I thought it was good. I thought it was like it gave very much period piece. It gave very much French Revolution. And I thought, the costuming was really good, especially, Anne Hathaway was on for 11 minutes, but like her transition from like this to this was absolutely, it was stunning. It was very stunning. But also too, I think like with all of the other sort of like pieces that happen, especially with like Master of the House, and then everything that like sort of like tailed on into it to Jean Verre's like suicide, right? Like he, does that to Jean Valjean's like transition throughout the entire film. And his costuming. What did we all think about it? Let's go to you, Jen, first. What do you think about the costuming? Do we think it fit? Do we think it was over the top? What do we think?
I think it was great. And this is where this being a longer movie helped the story, because they could portray the age, the progression of time with the characters a lot easier than they can in a stage play. One, you see it more clearly, right? If you're up in the balcony or the mezzanine, you're not going to notice, oh, they have gray at his temple, unless it's really obvious. So I think that lent itself to the story and really kind of let you understand you were watching this epic that took place over decades, basically. Hugh Jackman sure cleaned up well at the beginning, though, But no, I love the costumes. I've always loved, because a lot of them are very basic, right? It's just basic textiles. It's basic, it's cottons. They're trying to keep warm. They're getting scraps of whatever they can. Look at Anne Hathaway's character when she's, on the street. She's got a little bit of this wrapped around her hand, and then she's got a little shawl and kind of a corset, and it's very well done to show everybody's level or place in society and the progression of time. So I thought they did a beautiful job with the costuming in this film.
Sure. James, how did we feel about the costuming? Did we think they did a good job? Could have done better?
Thought it was great. Don't really have much to say. I thought they nailed it on everything. It seemed like it was historically accurate. And I think we also went into like a color scheme, or kind of a brightness, where we kind of brought down the whole thing. It seems like they sucked the saturation out of it a little bit. And I think that was done on purpose to kind of take the vivid. And that was really a big thing at that time. From like 2006 to 2015, it was all about muting the colors. Man of Steel was like that. They brought all the bright blues and reds out. Same thing with this. And I'm here for it. I liked it. I know it was very like what the thing back then, but I liked it.
Nice. And then Eric, what did we think about the costuming?
Oh, I completely agree. The costuming for this film was on point. Everybody from Hugh Jackman, young to old, to even Russell Crowe's military or cop outfits were on point. The clean sharpness, the textiles that they used, like you said, the muted color of the movie to bring out those like reds and the blue, like in the picture that's behind you, Jordyn. It just really encapsulates that, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, and this was at the very beginning of the film, right? Like where, Hugh Jackman looks like a crack addict, and then like Jean Verre's like, "Hey, hey, I'm here. I'm regal. I'm doing all this stuff.
Go pick up
And
my
then-
flag.
Wait, what? What'd you
Go
say?
pick up the flag."
Yeah, right. Like,
Retrieve
pick it
the
up right
flag.
now.
You notice Javert's rank increase throughout the film as
Yeah.
well as his
Mhm.
costume changes, and he gets the big French hat and all that stuff.
Yeah. And so I thought, right, like even though like you kind of see sort of like the darkness and the sucking out of like colors around them, I feel like a lot of the costumes were focused on the character that was the aspect of the time, or the aspect of or the subject of the song, right? And like it sort of like it brought it out and all that stuff. So I thought the costuming was really great. And so I kind of sort of want to like go. So all of us have seen sort of like a stage production of Les Mis, and a lot of us have seen this version, right? Let's talk about comparison to that, right? So when I saw Les Mis at the Pantages, obviously I was like, what the fuck is going on? But I do feel like it was a more enriching experience where you could see it and sort of like you don't necessarily get that like sepia tone like to the background of it, and where the stage production is now like, okay, we have to make people believe that they're here during this fight or during this, and then like during any of the scenes. And so for me, I feel like it's the stage production really brought out how vivid each scene was, and how powerful sort of they wanted to make this thing, right? Let's start with you, Erric. What was your comparison between the stage production versus like the film? And what did you think about sort of like the vividness of it being live versus on film?
Well, the picture I picked behind me is the stage productions picture. I love that more because as a musical theater actor and everything, you get to play a little bit more on stage, and you get be a little bit bigger and command the presence. Simplification of stage is sometimes you don't have a lot of set changes. Like I've seen a couple of versions of Les Mis where it's just the wall when they're actually doing the revolution, and that's it, and they're acting throughout. And you have to really be smart and show the audience and let them know what's going on with just your voice and your acting, everything like that. So that's why I enjoyed the play a lot more. The movie, however gorgeous it is and everything, and it brings me back to the Anne Hathaway part of it, because they did a lot of the work for her. Because in film you do have to do it lighter and everything, but I feel like a lot of the people, except for Hugh Jackman and everything, didn't really do their homework, and so that's why the film kind of annoys me. They may have, and I'm just not getting it, but that's what kind of gets to me.
Sure.
About the
All right, y'all. I knew this was going to happen. We got our first redeem of the night, literally in the last 13 fucking minutes of the channel. Nom Talk Network redeemed Sing Mode. So, Jen, since you've been singing all day, what did we think about the comparison between the musical version and the theatrical version? I'm so excited. Go.
It was easier to talk like Kermit the Frog.
It was. It really was. Just pick a song and sing it.
I feel that the stage musical Barricade was very emotional. Can't even think of a song. Oh, I saw the stage many times, and I think it's more fulfilling. It brings a different texture. And I can't rhyme to save my life right now. Oh man.
Go. Yeah, it was no, that was good.
Now I
That was really freaking good, Jen. We can all help her out, right, Jordyn?
Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate it. I would watch the stage play time and time and time and time again. And my eyes are green, so now they're green screening. I'm not a demon. I just noticed. So yeah.
That was good. That was
Tap
good.
out,
And Steph
tap
said
out.
you're good. Steph said we're good. Great.
Okay. Bravo,
Good job.
Jen.
Good job.
Bravo,
Dude,
Jen.
Jen and Eric, good job, man. That was good. Okay, Jen, you can really tell us what
Okay.
we thought.
So notably, the last time I saw the play, I've seen it twice with my daughter, and she spent more time watching me cry. There's just something about the emotion of the play and the starkness of the set. You know, it's very minimal. And then when the barricade, if you saw it at the Pantages, you probably saw something like this. The barricade, when it starts building itself, just like goosebumps all the way up to my scalp. It's just so, because you know something big is about to happen, this big pivotal moment. I think I enjoy watching the movie. I watch it every so often, but I would watch the stage play over the movie any day. The only complaint I have with the stage play is, why does Gavroche always have to be the director's like little nephew who can't sing ever?
Yeah.
Like, this kid was great. The kid in the movie is great. He's also in Into the Woods. He's the son. Jack. He's Jack.
He's Jack.
He's Jack in the Beanstalk. So, you know, this kid was good. I was like, oh, thank God. So I was so tired of pitchy little boys who can't sing.
No, we just got Eddie Redmayne. Wait.
Oh. You said it, not me.
Q redeemed hydrate. So everybody take a sip of what you're
Oh,
having.
thank you.
And James,
Right.
what do you think? What do you think about the difference between the theatrical version and the in person or theatrical version and then the movie version? How did it compare to when you saw it?
Yeah, seeing the theatrical version first, then going to see like a play, like a stage production, I was like, oh, they're shouting at me the whole time. And so there's just so many things where it's like, you have to put yourself in the place of the producer and be like, so we've done it this way 1,000 times on stage. And what would we do differently if we could do a movie? How would we change it? And the set, like, I've been to Paris and all I want to do is just walk through the streets and picture myself like in the 1800s. This set, there wasn't a lot. Valjean's thing on the mountaintop, that was probably really exciting for them to be able to do that. That was beautiful cinematography. However, beyond that, everything for the most part can be done with a stage set. And so I don't know that it was, they're like, oh, the chains are off, we can do anything now. Like, you got the barricade, you have the cafe, whatever. But there was a lot of softness in some of the delivery of the lines that you can't get away with on stage. And I could see a stage production saying, oh, must be nice to be able to whisper that, or to be able to to think about that and mutter something, must be nice. We didn't have that luxury. And I understand, I completely get that. But having then switched and gone the other way, I'm like, well, now I feel like everybody's shouting at me, and I feel like there's a lot of subtleties that are not getting communicated.
Like I said, I think for me, watching the stage production and then I don't want to say I wasn't taking it seriously because that's terrible, but just not sort of getting it, and then watching the theatrical version and being like, oh, cool, this is what happens, I understand it. I feel like now if I watched it again at the Pantages or in another theater, it would be a different experience for me. I think it would be a different oh, okay, cool, I kind of understand what's going on. And you're right, there's certain things in a movie where you don't have a sound team, right? You don't have editing. You don't have people that can come on and like just be like, oh no, sing this part again, right? Like when you're live, you can't. And like if you mess up, you mess up. And things don't necessarily sound the same as you would in a movie sort of set. And I feel like with this one, they had chances to correct mistakes, and they had chances to sort of like say, oh well, you know, that didn't sound right. Let's go back. Let's do it again, and do a repeat. Versus like in the theater, you can't. And these people are classically trained to sing and to actually, you know, do the thing perfectly in order to produce a production that, you know, makes money for, you know, everything else. So I would definitely give it a chance and see it again if, you know, if I got the chance. But I think like watching the film was sort of like a good enough understanding for me. So let's go into, I know we don't have that much time. Let's go into sort of last minute thoughts. Jen, let's start with you. Any last minute thoughts on Les Mis? Anything that you would recommend to anybody else that watches it?
Definitely, you know, watch it. Of course, don't worry about reading the book because no. But look up the PBS recordings of the 10th and 25th anniversary. You get to see so many cast members who have graced the stage. Michael Ball is one of my favorites. Colm Wilkinson, Norm Lewis, all of them, just phenomenal cast. And hey, even Nick Jonas does one of them. So yeah, you know, and he does. He's in the 25th anniversary, I think, that just happened.
Who does he play?
He plays Marius.
Right?
What? Was he Marius?
I think he is.
I think you're right.
Yeah. He doesn't do a bad job. It's pretty good. But no, overall, it's an enjoy. You know, I love musical theater, so I'll watch this movie in spite of Russell Crowe.
I'll do it. It's fine.
Yeah.
James, any last minute thoughts about Les Mis 2012?
I've struggled for a long time of trying to figure out, and I really just, I'm here just for Javert, and I struggled a long time with like, why do I feel like when I think the theme of Javert is justice, and justice is more complex, and this is not a complex character, this is a very legalistic character, but he represents justice. That's what I kept coming back to, and I realized that justice is actually far more complex. Just like this redemption, just like Valjean's character is far more complex than the surface level that he's reduced to, and everybody's character is so much more complex when you have the context. And justice is about context. Justice is about contextualizing the who, what, when, and where, and why, right? And Javert, and justice is blind, but Javert is not justice. Javert represents the law. Javert is legalistic, and he represents the law. The law doesn't have context. The law is written, and the law is immovable, and that's why he took his life at the end, because he couldn't deal with it. Whereas justice can. Justice is blind, and his experience, he was not able to be blind. He actually got to witness human transition and human transformation and all this stuff, and he couldn't deal with it. So I was really satisfied finally to be able to come up with that, like, oh, that was why it was necessary for him to destroy himself like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eric, anything? What are your final thoughts about Les Mis 2012?
So Eric does recommend this, and Eric is going to tell Jordyn right now, cue redeemed, talk in third person.
But what? How?
I see. Eric sees it in the chat. So Eric is going to help you out with this until it transitions to you. But Eric thinks everybody should watch this movie, but also should get to a stage version of it. Not high school, because that is horrible. Not high school. Try to get to a professional showing of it. I've seen some amateur ones as well that are pretty good. But give it a chance. If you don't like it the first time, watch it one more time to see. But just give it a chance. It is a movie worth watching.
Yeah, and I think all of your perspectives are valid, and like, when people watch it, they should definitely keep this in mind. I think especially for like James as well, like there's like a much deeper meaning and a deeper context to like these characters that you don't necessarily like pay attention to when you're like surface level watching it. But then when you sort of like get into the nitty gritty of it, you're like, oh, like that's why this asshole is the way that he is, right? Like he doesn't see certain aspects of life that need to play out because it's very like, and there's people like this today, right? Like it's like very one-sided. They don't understand why certain things happen the way that they happen and why people should be redeemed, or why there should be redemption, or why there should be certain things like justice that plays out. And so yeah, I think for me, I would say that if you don't want to sit through a long-winded version of it, watch this one first, and then go see a stage production of it and see if you like it and see if you like the way that it plays out, because it's very different, I feel, from like the theatrical version of Les Mis. And so yeah, my recommendation is, even though maybe it's a 3 out of 5 for us, it's a 5 out of 5 for James. You might like it, you might thoroughly enjoy it, and then see a stage production, and it might enhance your experience, right? So I say it's definitely worth a watch. It's going to be a long watch, but I feel like it's definitely just kind of like worth one. Just kind of like, okay, cool, and like theme your night, you know, food, drink, whatever, cocktails, water, and then that'd be a fun night. So I know we're towards the end of the night. It's been a wonderful time with you all. And literally, that's all the time we have to talk about the 2012 version of Les Misérables, or Les Mis. Shout out to my guests, y'all. Erric, Jen, and James. Y'all have been amazing. Y'all have been wonderful. Y'all have added so many beautiful and amazing aspects to this conversation. Oh my God, sorry, I almost choked. Let's talk about where we can find you. Jen, where can we find you? I know I found you this weekend. I knew about your happening, but where can everybody else find you?
I am on Instagram as do_as_Peggy says. And that is my personal Instagram, mostly cosplay and vintage stuff like that. Maybe my cat once in a while, except he has his own. He's also being a booger. Go away. And then I'm also very active in my cosplay service group, which is the Avengers Initiative at Avengers Cosplay. And we will be this coming weekend on Sunday, and actually Friday and Sunday, at the Citadel for Chips for Kids. So bring a toy out for some kids who wouldn't have a Christmas otherwise, and come see some superheroes and get your pictures taken.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, and I need to make a plug. Sorry, because this is my channel. I need to make a plug. Please come and bring out a toy out to the Citadel to support some kids in need. But also, if you're looking to donate, Nom Talk Network is doing a wonderful fundraiser for the month of December. We are supporting LGBTQ individuals, and specifically, producer Steph, you told me what it was, and I'm like in the community, and I'm like, I don't fucking know. Yeah, so we are supporting LGBTQ Community Network. So if you want, please make a donation. If you don't know how, you can contact us on Instagram, on Twitch, on anything. Please let us know if you want to make a donation. It's really important. We'll take anything. And we just want to make sure that our LGBTQ brothers and sisters and community are taken care of during this month. Erric, where can we find you? Where can we find you? Just kind of like lollygagging, or where can we follow you?
Everywhere. On all socials, TikTok, Instagram, all of that. You can find me at Heartless7. That's HARTL, the number 3, SS7. I'm just moping around right now because it's the holiday, so not really doing much.
Like, I'm depressed. I'm not doing shit.
My seasonal depression is acting with my regular depression.
You know, wonderful combination. Wonderful combination. And James, where can we find you? Where can we find your happenings?
I'm kind of a social media hermit, so you can find me on MySpace. And
wow.
With Tom. Yeah, I'm at Wayne Enterprises on Instagram. We'll see if maybe this year I'll post.
Yeah, just one post is fine, you know. And like I tell all of you, like I tell everybody, you can find me at City of Stars 13 on Instagram. I post really funny stories. I post my life on stories. I don't like to do posts. It takes too long. I feel like it just takes 5 minutes of my life that I'll never get back. But sometimes I will post, certain things that I love. So, yeah. So it's wonderful to see you all. Thank you all for tuning in. I would like to give a special shout out to our producer Steph, who is there, who's doing this stuff, who's amazing. You make this channel happen. You make this channel what it is. So thank you so much for everything. We love you. Thank you all for tuning in. Please be sure to join our Discord to keep the conversation going, as well as subscribing to our platforms. All of them are at Nom Talk Network. We directly stream through Twitch. So if you want to create a Twitch account and then subscribe, and then you can definitely redeem your Nom points for making us do ridiculous shit that I don't like to do, but we have to now. That would be awesome. So tune in to our next show, which is going to be Wednesday. We're going to be doing the 1997 version of Beauty and the Beast. I'm so excited. One of my favorite films. Love it. Until then, I'm your host, Jordyn Orozco, and I hope you have a nomorific evening. Good night, y'all.